What is up, guys? Wraec is here with a new video, and today we want to take a look at Lord of Sparkle's Yorhm Tum. Yeah, it's my final review. That's such a word that I don't really want to say. It's my review of Lord of Sparkle's Yorhm Tum. I took my time, tested him, built him, used an S tier copy now with Twine immunity. Built him up to Destiny rank, I think it's 3 he was. Tested a lot of skills, tested him in different teams. Did a lot of stuff, really. And now I can give you my final verdict. And I have to say, he is good in what he does, which is not what most people expect. And a super vague answer to your question, if he is a good hero and we should build him. Let's do another fight while I talk about this. A lot of people expected him to be this kind of new main damage dealer hero. This TBB, this LFA, this DTV, and that he would come into the game and do exactly that. And I have to say, I thought so too. And I had to learn that this is not really the position he fits in. You can't really make him work like that. At least you will have a very tough time. Let's choose somebody else to fight. We can fight Jesus and lose horribly, possibly. Well, that's okay. And that's really not the position you will want to use him. What he is essentially, in my opinion, is a support damage dealer. What does that mean? Well, he's not really the hero putting out the big hits. He can do that occasionally, but if you build your team around him doing that, I feel like you will be very disappointed very quickly. And there are other roles in which he just excels way more, in which he just does better. And the support damage dealer role mostly comes from his chase ability. You can see him all the time attacking the HHA in that case, because he's taunted here. And he tries to kill the lowest life hero. And what else he does is, and you could already see that in the beginning, he has Seal of Light, which is a very useful ability if you want to keep the enemy from using certain abilities. He also chases when he's CC'd, by the way, you could just see that. And then, of course, we have his big damage nuke, and sometimes this can be very good. For example, when you kill Jesus DTV with that. And all of this combined make him a great addition to other damage dealers, to like a TBB. You can block the enemy to a TBB from doing another passive skill. You can kill a DTV occasionally. You can kill a lowest life hero by multiple hits. He chases up to 6 times around. And then you have the weakness disclosure like divine retribution that we will see in a second again. It's the aura around him. And that can nuke an enemy entirely, through Unbending Will, through everything. And of course, nuking somebody through Unbending Will, well, that's never a bad ability. Doesn't always work, but when it does, it is definitely huge and can win you fights. So he isn't bad, despite not being like your main damage dealer, because we have other main damage dealers. And by the way, this is another example we see right here of him doing something good. HHA is sealed, so no longer any shield regeneration for the enemy, no longer any shield on block or something like that. And quite fittingly, he ends the fight. He's the lone surviving hero here, and well, that was a very good example, I have to say. I usually lose to Jesus, but okay, in the video, of course, we can win. That's quite nice. And yeah, so let's take a look at his abilities and I show you what I really mean and what I really like about him. So first of all, what is his active skill? His active skill is a big wall of text, and some people really misunderstood it. It says deals 2000% of attack damage to one enemy with the lowest HP, so classic thing to do for an assassin. And then afterwards there's an 80% chance to attack the enemy additionally up to 4 times. And each attack reduces the chance of triggering the next extra attack by 10% and has one of the following effects. Divine Light combo, that we get some bleed. On Skull Crushing Strike we have block ignoring damage and reduce the damage reduction by 20%. On Dodging Step we deal armor ignoring damage with a guaranteed crit and steal 10% attack. And on Blocking Kick we deal damage equal to 20% of the max HP, 1500% cap, and 90% chance to inflict Seal of Light for 2 rounds. I have to say, this Seal of Light infliction from the active skill, that is not something you can rely on. That is like, happens sometimes, but I rarely ever saw it. And if you trigger all 4 attacks, then you trigger Destructive Strike. And Destructive Strike inflicts 2000% of attack Divine Retribution. And that is an ability we saw on Tussilago. And it was quite the interesting ability, quite the deep ability, one of the best parts of his active skill, to be honest, in the right situation. If we kill something with Destructive Strike, we inflict it again on the next enemy with lowest HP. So it can like chain in a way, where you kill one enemy with it, and then the next, and the next, and the next. And maybe we can show that right now, actually. Let's show that. Okay, there you can see it. Basically, he does this Destructive Strike. I just paused the video, started a fight. He does this Destructive Strike, and then it chains from one hero to another. There is a bit to explain, though, on the matter of Destructive Strike and Divine Retribution. Let's first cover the first part of the active skill. We already saw the attacks, 80% chance to trigger one more. So first extra attack, 80% chance, second extra attack, 70% chance, 60% chance, and so on, up to 4 times. So most of those deal 2000% of attack damage, meaning the total damage of this is 10,000% of attack damage, and on top of that, Destructive Strike. The Divine Retribution part is a bit interesting. Let's read it. Its skill effect does not land a crit, and its damage is fixed and cannot be reduced or increased by attributes or skill effects. What does that mean in the end? It means it doesn't really matter too much what stats your hero has. Like, it can't be blocked because its damage can't be reduced by block. So there is no 35% damage reduction because the enemy blocked you. It can't be reduced by damage reduction or all damage reduction. Those won't work against this attack. On the other side, you can't buff it yourself. Not in any meaningful matter. Meaningful, I mean not through something like Endless Cane or crit damage or crit. It won't crit. It won't gain the all damage dealt buff from the Endless Cane. In fact, it won't gain most buffs that you put on this hero. The only real way to buff it is to buff the attack of the hero, because it's 2000% of attack. Of course, buffing the attack will help that. So if you have a way to buff attack, let's say Panda Team, that is a common way to buff attack for effect types like this. Panda Team was a common way. Or what I had in mind, Star Alchemist Holmes Young has an attack buff. So stacking attack buffs on him can make Divine Retribution stronger. The other thing that you have to keep in mind, this text is in fact wrong. It can be reduced by one attribute, and the attribute it can be reduced by is Divine Power. For whatever reason, the damage of this skill is actually reduced by the Divine Power gap. So if your hero has no Divine Power, there is this damage resistance. If you are wondering about what I mean by that, I won't go into too much detail here. I made a guide on Destiny Transition. You can find that if you just search for Wraec Destiny Transition. It's a pretty good guide in my opinion. I like the outcome. I like how it tried out. If you want to watch that, I will explain it in great detail there. So basically, this reduces the damage of your Divine Retribution. It is a bit horrible in the sense that you kind of are forced to put Destiny Transition on him. Well, in fact, he would be kind of nice addition even without that. But if you want to have any good results with the Divine Retribution, then you will really need some Divine Power on him to keep him at the same or at least only slightly lower Divine Power than the enemy. So that is still a pretty good effect because you ignore all of those defenses. It is not that strong in PvE, really. In PvE, you will see that the enemies often don't have that many defensive layers as in PvP. In PvP, enemies run crowns. We have specifically teamed up heroes that buff each other's defenses through sublimations and all of this fancy stuff. Let's just look at a hero like MFF giving other heroes all damage reduction. Like, this is something you are you're doing well against if you can ignore it, obviously. So it's pretty nice to do that, and can be way stronger than the regular 2000% attack hit, even if you can't crit with it. So it is a pretty strong ability. Also, it bypasses Unbending Will. So if you have a low life enemy that still has Unbending Will, well, it will hit right through that, kill that enemy. So pretty good. A chain like the one you saw before will mostly happen when the Divine Retribution, the damage of the Divine Retribution, exceeds the enemy's HP. So if you can do that and can make it exceed that HP by either lowering the enemy's HP or buffing the attack of Yorhm Tum, that can be a very strong ability. We also have some sublimations here. The all damage dealt buff is decent. We can of course take that. Some HP restoration, always nice. This last one, I have no idea why they put that in there. Increases skill damage by 10%. Usually if the way skill damage would add to that would mean it would put it from 2000 to 2010%. It's only the next extra attack. I have no idea why they did it that way. Maybe they mean like 10% in the sense of from 2000 to 2200, but adding skill damage to it that is very useless, I think. So, not really needed. And then again, the basic attack, I learned to like this one. First of all, we have some dodge ignoring stuff, which, I nearly forgot about that. Let's add that. Destructive strike can be dodged, which is a horrible weakness. I have to add. It happens so often, and we will see some gameplay of that against Jesus again at the end. It happens so often that it is dodged. This is like the part that you're looking for. This is the part where you say, okay, my Yorhm Tum now has Majesty of Divine Sparkles active, and he is going to unleash this destructive strike, and then it just gets dodged. That is a horrible feeling, and that is the main feeling why I don't really want to have him as a main damage dealer and see him in the support damage dealer role next to TBB, for example. It can be dodged, and it gets dodged quite often. So, horrible downside of this ability. If this was dodge ignoring, he would be 10 times better, honestly. Okay, back to this. Changes basic attack to deals block and dodge ignoring damage. It's quite nice, pretty good actually, because like an HHA or something can't block it. Very nice. To lowest HP, cannot land a crit. That actually gets removed with the noble sublimation. This is a decent attack boost. And then we have this like 50% chance to deal 3 times damage, 35% chance to deal 5 times damage, and 100% chance to gain 1 layer of Breath of Sparkles 3, which does our all damage dealt by 8% and is later on used in the passive 3. Okay, we have an 80% skill damage, which is fine. 80% is actually decent. 750%, that's more than a 10% damage buff, so pretty good. And this one is really the big one. This one is the one you definitely want if you want to use him in endgame PvP. The deep sublimation for the 90% chance to inflict Seal of Light is one of the most useful things on him, and it's the sole reason I don't run him with an energy artifact, but in fact with an AMB. You can also run him with Rui. I don't think that's particularly worth it. I would run him with an AMB so that he does an early basic, hits, for example, an HHA that taunted him. I intentionally run him without taunt immunity because I want the enemy HHA to taunt this guy. Because if he taunts this guy, I will seal him, and then there is no taunt anymore. There is no block shields anymore. There is no damage reduction from those shields anymore, so I can hit the enemy very hard with my TBB, which is a very nice effect and a very nice combination that I can recommend to you guys. So definitely get this deep sublimation. Passive skill-wise, we're looking at 2 relevant passive skills. This one is the chase passive skill. Every time an ally reaches an active or basic attack, we chase and attack one enemy with the lowest HP. One time, 600% attack damage, quite substantial actually. Once you have Divine Power on him, you will notice that this is in fact a skill that deals a lot of damage. Similar to the basic skill, we have this 50% chance to do 2 times damage, 35% chance to do 3 times damage. And keep that in mind that there are those percentages on nearly all of our skills when we talk about Majesty of Divine Sparkles later. And we increase our speed by 6, so we have some pretty nice speed buffs as well on this hero. Regular HP attack stuff, and then we have also attack and HP, HP restoration when we deal damage with our chase. The thing is, oftentimes we really don't deal damage when we hit an enemy that has a shield. So we don't restore that much HP with it. It is nice though, a little bit, we restore a little bit, and that can be quite good. And each chance and chase and attack has a 15% chance to gain 1 layer of Breath of Sparkles, which I still consider one of the better or best passive skills that he has. 15% chance is not that high of a chance, but gaining Breath of Sparkles frequently is one of the main ways to deal really good damage with him. And Breath of Sparkles is now the topic of this passive 3, which is one of the more important ones. Aside from giving us a 35% chance to dodge active and basic attacks, which is great passive skill, very nice. Dodge is always good. 35% chance feels rather low though, because if you fight an enemy and he has a good dodge offset star spawn, he has like 20% or something on there. Then you are left with like 15% chance to dodge, which isn't much. But we have another thing here. If the dodge is successful, Self has 100% chance to gain 1 layer of Breath of Sparkles. Again, great. And if we don't dodge, our dodge rate is buffed by 10%. So if we get hit a lot by weak enemies, then we have a good chance to dodge something else. Well, very good, actually. So his dodge rate gets higher. When Breath of Sparkles stacked to 5 layers, consumes all layers of them to grant self Majesty of Divine Sparkles and 100 energy. And Majesty of Divine Sparkles is our damage enabler. What this does is basically we consume all of our layers of Breath of Sparkles with R5, and those granted us 40% all damage dealt. And we remove those, but we keep the all damage dealt basically at 40%. And when releasing an active skill, consumes Majesty of Divine Sparkles to increase the chance of releasing an extra attack each time to 100%. Self cannot gain Breath of Sparkles when having Majesty of Divine Sparkles. So we actually are guaranteed to do all of our 4 extra hits and the Destructive Strike when we have Majesty of Divine Sparkles. And this is the time where he deals really huge damage, because oftentimes you will only get 1 or 2 hits, but with this, of course, we are in the high damage territory, and that's very nice. Sublimations, deep sublimation, some extra attack, okay, and this one I thought was pretty nice. Once we gain Majesty of Divine Sparkles, often this is like on turn 1 or 2, depending on your RNG, all damage buff for all the allies. We don't really need those. Like, those are nice, but we don't really need those. You can live without those. I would want to get this one. So I would go for the passive 2, probably. I would get the Seal of Light here. That is pretty important. Buff the main skill of the active skill. And I mean, you can go further than that. We can go the pure deep as well. Main skill here, get the deep sublimation here, but I get this one complete. And if you only get like the main part here, that's all right. So obviously towards the end, and if you really want to go for divine power, you will need them all. And at that point, it doesn't really matter what I said right now. But yeah, that's the thing. So in a way, you want to position him so he can gain his Majesty of Divine Spark as well. Slot 1, 2 can be interesting for that. And other than that, you want to have strong chases and you want to make use of a Seal of Light. This is the main part. Here I run an Elusive Mirror. That was like the first artifact I tried. Also works pretty well. Sometimes you are lucky and then you can like one-shot the enemy HHA, even the one from Jesus. It can work, but I don't really like that it happens like once every 5 to 6, 7 fights. That is not consistent enough. It's not consistent enough, so I don't really do that. I want the AMB now. Speed Attack Stone is what I use. Usually I go for speed precision, but the thing is, you kind of want to buff your attack a little to get the higher Divine Retribution. So I go with that. Yeah, I don't really have to say much in regards to enabling. You want the speed, as much speed as possible. Here I just go damage reduction, holy damage, crit damage. You can also go with skill damage, obviously. That is a nice way to use that as well. We have full subs here, we have the core, obviously, and on the Destiny transition, we have a pretty nice Destiny transition as well. Let's go over that very quickly. We'll look at that in this screen. We also have the Divine Retribution here. We talked about that. So we have a Divine Retribution that hits the entire back row. Very strong, very nice. Pretty good as well. So if you buffed him, you have a huge hit coming up at 12 layers. Sadly, that's quite a lot. And considering I see him in bursty teams with TVBs or something, he often struggles a bit to get it. But if he gets it, that can be a nice finishing blow. I go with active skill here. And here we also have some skills. I often just select the 8% target's max HP. That is what I go for. Here we have speed reduction, can be interesting if you really want to outspeed the enemy. Otherwise, yeah, the armor is really not that good. You can go crit, but I go with speed. I just take this 300%. I would take it if I had it. I don't really have it. This one can work against the Stany teams. I would just think they are a little bit weakened already, probably later in the round, so I take this one. The self-energy increase can be good, but it's not really like that much of a big thing. And I kind of like the speed, honestly, because the all damage there doesn't really help with the Divine Retribution. It's nice for the rest of the skills. But I like the speed as well, just to be faster than the enemy, which is a big point and something we talk about. Here we have the big Seal of Light, which is interesting. When a self has 12 layers of transition power, consumes 12 layers of them to inflict 1600% of it in Divine Retribution on the backline enemies, and we have a 60% chance to inflict Seal of Light on each target for 1 to 3 rounds respectively. We can't test that right now. I really like this. I really like this. Like, we don't have enough Seal of Light, and Seal of Light is so important. Again, to remind you what Seal of Light does, is it hinders the enemy, or it blocks the enemy from using passive skills. So the enemy can no longer use relevant passive skills, like TBB activating her active skill through her passive too. She will no longer do that. HHA granting shields, she will no longer do that. Stuff like that. We have some very major passive skills, and sealing them with Seal of Light is very, very good. So having that here, very nice. And at Destiny rank 6, I can see him being even better. This is a very strong Destiny rank 6. So pretty good there. Let's watch some more gameplay against Jesus. And in the meantime, I can tell you some more stuff and we can maybe point out a few things. So let me select the team. And there we go. Let's just hop in and see what he does. You can see the first few things that I talked to you about. You can see like the AMB on him. We hit the HHA. He's now sealed. So we see no shields. His Ferric Investor instantly killed by that, because he just didn't get that restoration. Didn't really matter that he blocked us. Now he has no longer the Seal of Light, so bam, we have shields everywhere, blocking us from doing real damage. But you can see how much more devastating this TBB really got just by removing this HHA's passive from the equation. So that is really huge. And we can even get some extra hits in here. You can see how close he gets to us killing him. Very, very nice. I personally put Twine Immunity recently on him. I just think it is better to improve against TBB than against an HHA. I personally see it as an advantage if he's taunted by an HHA, because it gives us this wonderful opportunity to really go ham on the enemy team and destroy them. One thing that is a bit of a problem, and we should mention, is that Jesus... yeah, see Half-Life, by the way. That Jesus DTV is pretty strong. That is a bit of a problem indeed. But yeah, beyond that, I have the problem on my account. I can't really afford two mainly PvP heroes. Meaning that I can't really set up my TBB and my LOS at the same time. And you can see how that can be a problem. Now my TBB has no survivability, doesn't really do the damage I need to blast through Jesus team. And at the same time, if I now remove the materials from my LOS, put them on my TBB, well, then LOS won't no longer be that great, because he just won't do enough damage to punch through those HHA shields. So then you only have the Seal of Light left, and that's not really enough, I think, to reason or to run him on the team. Yeah, so that is a bit of my problem with him at the time. We didn't really see a dodge yet of this weakness disclosure. We see him dodging, which is quite nice. But yeah, so that's a bit of a thing. The other thing, and also something that we can mention in this context, is I said, well, he's not really a PvE hero. Why do I say that? Well, he does deal good damage with his active skill. Barry showed that if you want to check this out. He does deal better damage, in fact, than LFA in most cases. Not against bosses. LFA is the king of bosses. There is no way LOS keeps up with that. But in fact, LOS can do very well in campaign. There are some situations where I even see the Seal of Light stuff being useful. The problem he has in campaign is that there are just way better options. And the option is DTV. And often the problem is that DTV is just easier to use in PvE, also in PvP. You can see Jesus set up this DTV with huge attack and Twine immunity and build a little bit of a sustain team around him, and that works pretty well. While he clears lowest life heroes, Jesus just waits for his DTV to one-shot my team. So yeah, that is a bit of a problem. You will most likely not want to invest into this hero for PvE and will likely just go for a DTV because that's way, way easier. So yeah, in the end, he is decent in PvE, but he's not the main hero you want. So beyond that, there is a little problem with his Divine Retribution. As I said, like in PvE, enemies don't really have that high of a defense. They don't have crowns equipped, they don't have GPF equipped, nothing like that. So if they don't have that, then we really have to think, how valuable is it to ignore defenses then? Well, the answer is not very much. If we have some armor break, we already ignore most of the defenses of the enemies in PvE. So that really makes it worthless. If his Destructive Strike ignored Divine Power, well, maybe we would be looking at some possibilities towards clearing maybe new enemies with Divine Power, something like Void Bosses. Where, by the way, just the Void Boss 3 was released on TapTap, and we'll look at that another time. But yeah, so that would be interesting. I want to use him. I want to build this team that you just see, but I want to have it with a big TBB. I want to have it with, and there was the dodge that I was waiting for, by the way. And I want to have him with a big TBB. I want to have him with a big LOS and want to punch through those enemies. Oh yeah, it feels like a bit too much PvP focus for me. So that was a bit of a problem. And there we have the Majesty of Divine Sparkles, which is, by the way, this yellow effect didn't keep him alive there, sadly. But yeah, that's the thing. So that's a bit of my perspective and my idea on the current situation regarding LOS. And maybe to add to that, and part of the reason why a lot of people now use TBB again, the people that had an STBB and used that for Void Horde, well, they quickly noticed that TBB most of the time deals with LOS pretty well, because his dodge is not really working well against TBB. The reason for that is you can't dodge passive skills, and TBB's active skill, the one that she triggers with her passive 2, that is a passive skill. It is considered a passive skill. So in that sense, when we think about that, it being considered a passive skill, he can't dodge it, so he will get CC'd. Is a bit ridiculous, but yeah. So that is a thing, and also we have DTV with his weakness disclosure offsetting dodge with that. So those meta heroes, they just work against him. If you have an S tier copy though, and you make that Twine immune, and you run that together with the TBB as a main damage dealer, well, that has some chance to work. So yeah, that can be nice. And we can see it working pretty well here, actually, at removing Unbending Will layers, at hitting the HHA every now and then, and actually they're getting a kill. So pretty nice. It can be pretty nice. He's just not the main damage dealer that you want to go for. He's not the main hero that you want to build. He will be a support damage dealer. I will try to use him. I can also see him with my SSM that we, by the way, are now enhancing. So in that sense, it will be fairly interesting to see what teams people come up with him. Have you tried him yet? What is your opinion on him? Let me know down in the comments. And with that, I would say, I wish you a great day. We'll see us in the next one.